why me? Like, what is it? Why? Like, what did I do? Like, you know, there's plenty of times where I was like, what did I do to get this illness? Like, is this some kind of karmic thing? Like, you know, sometimes like when it just keeps coming and keeps coming, it's like, why? You know?
Mm-hmm. This is the I Am Redemption podcast, and today I have my very good friend Dan Lennon on. I became aware of Dan a couple years ago. How many years ago would you say it is? It's got to be 5 or 6 now.
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. Mm-hmm. Right when I got into the running world, I think we were, if I remember correctly, we were out on a run together, and you had mentioned you were a Patriots fan, and then the shit talk began from there. And we kind of fostered our friendship, and me being a Steelers fan and everything. But got to know Dan, got to know his lovely girlfriend, right? Fiance. Congratulations. Let's go. Let me see the ring.
Oh, well, I win.
Oh, okay. All right. We're going to act like she's not sitting over there. But, no, became cool with Dan, started to get to know a little bit about his story. And, I mean, it's a very unique one. And to know, you know, what's kind of happened with you, and then to see some of the races you've done and getting to know you in the running world, man, it's just a testament to your toughness and your story and everything like that. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my buddy Dan. Dan, if you just want to throw out a little bit of your story, let everybody know who you are and, you know, what some of your journey's been like.
Right on, yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, really grateful to have met you, and essentially, really, my turning point in my life happened in about 2014. So pretty much I grew up on the East Coast, Rhode Island, and lived a pretty normal life, healthy life, and was involved in sports and small town that basketball was everything, and you and I have that in common, you know. So yeah, I grew up hooping and youngest of 3, so yeah, man, I mean, don't really have a lot of complaints, you know, when it comes to that, but it was really until after I graduated from the University of Rhode Island, I started experiencing like these really severe symptoms, and it didn't feel like myself. I knew like what I normally felt like, you know, and how I operated in the world, and this wasn't it. And the best way I could describe it is like I like walked around with like a weighted blanket, essentially, of like severe fatigue and pain, and yeah, and then I really started having a bunch of cognitive dysfunction, meaning like my memory just wasn't the same, and my moods were really low, and I was like, man, this is what is this? And
How long did that go on for? Like, how long did you experience that before you ever got an answer on what was going on with you?
Somewhere around 3 years, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so that was like, you know, they talk about like dark night of the soul, you know, like, you know, I've heard like you're lucky if you've had one or several, and yeah, that, you know, this was, I mean, I had plenty of like childhood trauma and like family trauma and all that, but yeah, this was like my first time where it was like, okay, I'm an adult and like really facing some kind of adversity, and like you got to figure it out, you know, like no one's coming to save you. So yeah, I just kind of pushed on for a while for that, like that first, you know, year or so, and to be frank, like my life just started falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was in like a long-term relationship that pretty much crumbled. I had to step away from my career in video production, actually, and yeah, and then you know, it was tough, like being in your 20s and like not being at the bar and like not being like the life of the party and like people seeing you, but like, you know, I was like a shell of myself, essentially. Right. So yeah, flash forward to, you know, I went and saw my doctor, just like my primary care, the guy who I'd go get my physical from, and I said, hey, like something's not right, like can you test me for, you know, whatever? And he's like, yeah, let's do it, you know, I'm sorry you're not feeling good. So he tests, you know, all the normal stuff, and he said everything's normal, you know, nothing, I don't see anything that is alarming. And I said, well, I'm not feeling well, like I'm not right, you know. And he said, okay, well, I'll send you to a specialist. So pardon me, that started on a journey where I saw over 20 doctors. So like essentially I was the youngest person in like rheumatology, neurology. I mean, I was sent to like, shrink, so, pretty much what happened was after I saw all these different specialists and they kept saying there's nothing wrong with you. And I was like, no, there definitely is something wrong because my body's signaling that, hey, something is wrong. And after seeing about close to 20 doctors, they told me it was all in my head, essentially. They told me that, you probably have depression and, here are some psych meds, essentially, to take and, just kind of figure it out, carry on. And, I'm an East Coast boy like yourself, and, I was kind of like respectfully, F you,
Yeah.
like, no, and that's not. And so I refused those meds, and I kept, dropping into my body. Like, I know, like, my body has the answers, you know what I mean? So I know my body's telling me, like, bro, something's not right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, essentially,
Are they misdiagnosing you along the way, or they're just saying we don't know what's wrong or there's nothing wrong? Or are they trying to say we think you have this, we think you have that?
a little bit of both. It was mainly I don't know, which I do respect. But then once they started getting to the point of it's in your head, I was like, nah, like that, to me, that's a misdiagnosis. But I'm not over here. Number one, I'm not a victim. Number two, I'm not like blaming anybody. Really, what I ended up finding out through a complete stranger online. So like, here's the thing. Like, so I have like severe depression, alcoholism, all like suicide, all that stuff in my bloodline, in my family, like people close to me, and I'm just so blessed and grateful that we have the technology that we have. So like straight up, like a complete stranger on an online Facebook group, like saved my life.
Really?
And like he was, what I ended up started doing was like, I finally was like, okay, it's in my rights as like a patient, like your patient rights, I believe it's HIPAA, where you can get all your test results. So I got to a point where I was like going to doctors saying like, doc, like what's wrong? Like help me, to using the doctor as a tool to empower myself. And that was like the big change where I was like, okay, I want this test done, and let me get the results, and then I'll see based on like the information I'm gathering where that fits into my puzzle. And when I started doing that, I literally would like get on these forums like Facebook groups and stuff and be like, hey, I have this test result, has anyone had this done? And then what I essentially started running into was people were like, you're sure you don't have Lyme disease? And I was like, yeah, I don't have Lyme disease. They told me I didn't have it. And they're like, no, but like, are you sure? And like I said, it was actually my mom. Actually, I was really sick. My mom drove me to, and I mainly went to a lot of my appointments by myself, but I got to a point where I was just like not really able to function anymore. And I was like getting to the end of the line where there was no more specialists to see. And at one point they told me I had chronic fatigue syndrome, which is really just, we acknowledge that like you're tired and like, there's no cure, but, and there's really no specialist except for there was one woman in New York City, literally. So me and my mom drove into the city. It was like 3.5 hours from where I grew up in Rhode Island. And within the first 5 minutes of the appointment, the woman was like, I'm really sorry. I don't, I know this might be hard to hear, but I think you should file for permanent disability and start now, because you're going to get denied. You're going to have to hire a lawyer, and you're going to thank me in like 2.5 years when you get your full disability. And I was like, with all due respect, F you, kind of. I didn't say that, but and for me, there were points later that I kind of.
She was just chalking it up to chronic fatigue syndrome?
So what she essentially, to be clear, what she was saying was, there's nothing I can, she did say this, there's really nothing I can do for you. My patients don't get better, and the only way for you to survive is to be on full permanent disability. And like for me, here I'm like 20-something years old, and I'm like, I'm just starting my life. Like to me, that was like, and I'm not slighting anyone for being on disability. Like 100%, people, it saves people's lives, and I'm in full support of it. But for me, I just made that distinction. Like I'm not going to just chalk it up like, okay, this is going to be my reality for the rest of my life now. So I never did file. I left the office, and like I said, I just kind of went back into like, I'm going to be my own doctor. I'm going to be my own healer. And then I went back on the forums and started talking to people. And a complete stranger online was like, bro, you need to go see this doctor in Connecticut to get properly tested for Lyme disease. Like, I don't care what you've gotten tested in the past. It's very flawed, and it's not as cut and dry as they're making it sound. So anyway, when I did that, I went and saw a PA, which is like a physician's assistant.
Right.
And that doctor saved my life. He tested me properly for Lyme and the other diseases that the ticks carry, because without getting too much into the weeds, essentially, if you ever hear someone say, like, I have Lyme disease, like, I'll say, like, I'm Dan, I have Lyme disease. That's like an umbrella term. Like, if you have PTSD, you may have complex, different things.
Gotcha.
So with Lyme, these little ticks, they carry multiple bacteria, multiple viruses, a lot of things. So he finally tested me in a correct function and found out that not only was I off the charts for Lyme, I also had 2 other really serious diseases that the ticks carry. So when that happened, I was like, it was almost like a weight off my shoulders, because I was like, wow, like, okay, this is a point where I could start, like, okay, I know that I have something. I can work on, like, healing those things, because for the 3+ years previous to that, I was just kind of in no man's land, like, feeling really isolated, feeling really, like, depressed, and, like, losing different parts of myself, but not really having any direction to go forward. So I kept seeing that doctor for a few years, and I wish I could say, like, oh, I found the diagnosis and I treated it and, like, everything was sunshine and rainbows. Unfortunately, it wasn't like that. I ended up seeing other doctors after seeing him, and I had a permanent IV in my arm for, like, on and off for, like, 2 years. I took, like, hundreds of different medications, and I got better than I was. My cognitive abilities started coming back, and I started building community, right? I mean, that's the whole thing, is like, I felt so isolated and alone because I couldn't relate to anybody, because people are like, oh, I'm buying a house, or, oh, I got promoted, or, oh, I'm getting married, and I'm over here like, oh, okay, like, here I am, like, living at my mom's. I was on food stamps, Medicaid, barely being able to pay for the medications that I needed and the supplements that I needed. But,
it essentially stunted your life there for a couple years, where everybody else is continuing to progress in their career field and in every other aspect, and you were unable to do that.
Yeah, and, like, the way I look at it, and I've looked at it for a while like this, but it took me several years to get here, is, like, the illness path. It was, like, one of my most powerful teachers, like, and that's why, like, I feel like you and I get along so well. And frankly, a lot of my friends either have an addiction background or military a lot of times, because I can relate to those populations so well, because they've had their identity and a lot of things stripped from them. And a lot of people in the world, I mean, everyone faces their adversity, but really I lost like a decade,
Really?
And I hate to say lost, but I was held by the illness for I'm like in like year 9.5, really. I'm coming up on 10 years. So, but I say that in the sense that it's been my most powerful teacher. So if it wasn't for the illness, I wouldn't have had, like, the way I look at it is like veils. Like, if I had, like, the career that I, right out of college, and, like, I, got married and had the house or whatever, then, like, I wouldn't have learned any of the things that I learned, which mainly for me was, I'm not what I do for work. I'm not my body. I'm not my bank account. Like, all of those things. Like, who are you really?
Yep.
And that's where, like, the real blessing came in. It's just like, no, who are you? Because, like, for me, like, operating in a super pain, fatigue, depressed. I was depressed for years. I'm like, I'm not this depression. I'm not this pain body. I'm not this financially broke, person. I'm not those things. So who am I?
Yeah. And,
like, that's what really set me on this path of, like, like, what is really important? Like, who are you? Why are you here?
Right. Dude, it's crazy how aligned everything you're saying is, and, like, stuff in my world with addiction. Like, all these same, I would have never have thought that, you know what I mean, at first, before I had ever known you. How could you ever know that? But everything you're saying literally goes along exactly with my life. Like, I lost lost basketball at a young age, and so now all of a sudden I'm a teenager, and it's like I don't have an identity anymore. Like, who am I? And then so many years put into drugs and alcohol and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden now I'm a newly sober mid-30s guy looking in the mirror like, who the fuck am I? And that, exactly like you're saying, that was my greatest teacher, addiction. That's given me all the education and qualifications I need to be who I am today, and I wouldn't change that for anybody, dude. So
Right.
it's crazy to see the similarities in both of our stories, even though they're on different spectrums of the universe, kind of.
Right.
What was it like for you dealing with this invisible disease? Like,
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I appreciate that. I still live with it, so that's where, like, I pause because...
apologize. I didn't mean to...
No.
saying that you don't, but
No,
you're
no.
obviously in a much better place. So, but
Yeah.
what is it like?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah. I pause, like, if I'm keeping it a thou. Like, last weekend I had a really hard weekend. And, like the way I guess I describe, like, where I'm at now is, like, it's really, like, honoring the disease, really, I guess you could say. So, like, for example, like, a lot of people, like, this may sound verbose, but, like, when you say cancer to people, they just, like, get it. Like, if you said, like, oh, I'm in remission from cancer and, like, I have to be really strict with my diet, or, I have these pains or something, like, people are like, oh, boom, like, that's really intense, and, like, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say, like, oh, I'm in remission from Lyme disease, people are like, well, what is that? So, like, for example, I think it was 3 years ago, I got a scholarship, and we fundraised, my partner and I and my family, for me to go overseas to Germany for a really intense treatment called hyperthermia, where they raise your core body temperature up to 105.8. Like, they warm you up, essentially, and then they treat you when you're in, like, a coma.
How do they do that? With, like, infrared lights?
So yeah, it's almost like a tent that
Yeah.
you kind of get in, and they heat you up.
Uh-huh.
And the reason why I ended up doing that was because I hit a plateau in my treatment, and I got to a place where I couldn't function. And this is not that, like I said, this is 3 years ago.
Okay.
So like, for you and I, like, we trained and ran a race. I think it was like 2 years ago. It was a 50K. That was my first race that I had done in probably 10 years.
Really?
And, like, that's the thing that a lot of people don't see with, like, the invisible part, like, within the addiction community, within the veteran community, like, like I was mentioning, like you were mentioning, I can't see, like, within an addiction, like, I can't look at Sean. He looks like a big, strong guy. He's a handsome dude. He's doing well. But I couldn't tell. You could be deep in an addiction, and I would have no way of telling.
Right,
So it's the
right.
same thing for me. Like, I look, like, vibrant and healthy and things like that. But, like, if you saw me last weekend, you would have been like, who is that guy?
Really?
And so I still deal with, and that's why I say, like, you said, like, what is it like living with invisible illness? It's lonely. It's isolating. It's very challenging because, like, 1 week or say 6 months, like, I'm real solid and I'm, like, totally good.
Mm-hmm.
And then out of nowhere, it can kind of, like, my pain can come back, or, like, I can't sleep, so I have to, like, go back to certain things. So, like, to be totally honest, if I'm being honest with myself, I have PTSD from that experience. And, like, sometimes you can even ask my fiance, like, I'll go into what I would describe as, like, a flare, like, because I'm in remission, but, like, I still have certain things that can pop up. And when that happens, I'm like, man, like, all the things run in my head. It's like I said, if you're, say, 2 years sober and then you kind of had the itch again, you're like, man, I don't want to go back there. Like, like, I don't like this. Let me go to a meeting or something.
Yeah.
But, like, to be frank, like, there's really no meetings for chronic illness,
Right.
bro. Like, there's no, like, community. And that's why, like...
forums and chats and places like that aren't going to do it for you. You need that human contact of somebody that you know is going through the same shit, right?
Yeah, exactly. So for years, when I was, like, really in the depths of, like, the fight, I didn't have any friends that weren't sick. I just couldn't relate to people. You know, it's like I would imagine it would be similar, like if you're in 12-step or something. Most of your homies are probably going to be in recovery because it's like we're all in this together. Now, I've gotten to a place where it's like, you know, most of my people now don't have the illness or anything like that, but I still have my people that I can be like, yo, you know, call on, you know, in a sense. And, like, I'm very lucky that, like, I have an incredible partner who, like, accepts me fully and all of that. But to your point to the community, I'll just say, one thing that's really changed my life is like men's work. So I started doing, so like flash forward, so like the part of the story I was mentioning before was like mainly in Rhode Island. I was getting treated in Boston and Connecticut, and I was living on the East Coast my whole life. And then in 2018, I was really struggling. In the wintertime, we were just getting dumped on snow, and it was just, you know, it's dark all the time and all that stuff. And you know, for me, like sauna, like one thing I'm really blessed is that I was able to continue to exercise pretty much the whole time. And a lot of people within like my community, within the chronic illness community, can't do that. A lot of people, because they have like, they go out and work out once, they're like laid up for a week or different things like that. And like, I was able to keep running. Like I would get my IV. So I had the permanent IV in, which you can't take out, and I couldn't exercise with that. And eventually I got so fed up with it, I was like, nah, I can't do this anymore. So then I started having a nurse come to the house, and she would place an IV in my arm called a peripheral line, where I'd have it in from Monday to Friday, and then they would place it on a Monday, and then I'd take it out myself on Friday and work out on the weekend, and then she'd come back on Monday. And like that was the thing that like saved my life. So like I'm really grateful that I grew up like playing sports and like knowing the importance of like moving, and like, I know it's changed your life, and like, you know, in the recovery field it's like huge. So like, you know, yeah, being sober is big, but like what else are you doing, you know? So anyway, the sauna and the working out and things like that, just it wasn't enough. So I went and actually stayed with a friend of a friend. I went to Costa Rica in the middle of the wintertime in 2018, and I had an incredible transformative experience out there. And I got back, and I was like, it's time for me to go. So I had one friend in Austin. I packed up my sedan, and I drove down to Austin in 2018, and I haven't left since. But Austin has been incredible to me. Not that it's like a perfect utopia, but people are very active here. Everything's not revolved around alcohol, which like that was my experience a lot like in the East Coast is like, and I guess you can find anything anywhere, but like a lot of it's just like the way I grew up, like I love my family, I'm incredibly blessed, but like you drink at funerals, you drink at weddings, you drink at graduations, you know what I mean? And I got to a point where I was just like, no, toxic alcohol, no. I've been sober from alcohol for years. You know, I have to be very strict, or I get to be really strict with my diet, gluten-free, all that stuff. But like I was saying about Austin is when I came here, I started just like really building this new community of people in the running community, right? So it started with a group called Eastside Beer Runners that were an incredible group of people that we would meet every Wednesday and go for a run. And I did that for years and grew that, and that's how you and I ended up meeting. And then I started doing men's work. So essentially, a friend of mine, his name's Leo, he unfortunately passed away like a year ago, started this men's group in Austin. And every week I started going to that. When after COVID, when the running group stopped, I was like, well, I still need my community, you know? So we did that, and now me and a couple of other guys run that group. So I co-lead a men's group called the Men of Mawai, and we meet every Wednesday night, and we just support one another, and really it's like it's led by spirit, you know. So it's like people on the spiritual path, people like discovering themselves and like working on themselves and things like that, and it's donation based. It's not like we're not selling anything. We're not coaching anyone. It's just like people like you need a place or you want a place to like show up and like have people have your back, and you know it's there every week. Then please come.
That's dope.
And that has been huge because it's just like that community that you mentioned. Like I can't do anything alone. Like I don't feel like any of us can really. So really that, and then I started doing deep healing work with psychedelics.
Hold on, let's pause right there.
Yeah, please.
Let me go back real quick. So dealing with Lyme disease and like your day-to-day life, right? You talk about the amazing partner you have. You know, I know her. I know how amazing she is. But what is that like? Like, you know, one of the struggles I have. My wife has anxiety. You know, it's not what you have, but it's something I can't really see. I can see when she's going through it, but I don't have that, so I don't necessarily understand it like she does.
Right.
And I mean, we've had our issues to where, like, you know, we're going out to dinner tonight, and then she's like freaking out before we go out to dinner, and it's just a simple thing. Or like we're going into the grocery store, and it becomes this whole thing. And like, you know, we've been together a while now and have figured out how to work through it.
Yep.
But it's still, you know, I know what she doesn't know what it's like to be an addict, just like I don't know what it's like to suffer with what she suffers from. So what has it been like for y'all, and like what do you think y'all have done to be able to, for it not to be the demise of y'all's relationship?
Wow. Yeah, that's a powerful question. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's definitely tested our relationship, if I'm being totally 1,000. Yeah, I mean, to be frank, like when her and I started talking, I remember specifically we sat down and I just said, hey, like, you know, I know you don't really know this part of me, but I wanted to share, like, this is what I've been dealing with, and you know, this is something that may not be going away. And she was like, something to the effect of like, I'm not scared, you know, like I'm here, you know what I mean? It didn't bother her one bit. And then I think when
she says that, are you kind of like in your head, like, we'll just wait until you see the other side of it?
100%, yeah. I mean, it's the whole thing of like, you don't know what you don't know,
right?
You know, so it's like, Shauna, I love you, and like I understand that you're telling me you do with addiction, but it's not until like some stuff is like really hitting the fan where they're like,
until I pawned the TV, stole her car, and cleaned her bank account out, and I'm like, now do you get it?
Yeah.
Right.
Or now do you still love me?
Right. Yeah.
You know, so you know, and that's, you know, we've gotten, thankfully, you know, haven't gotten there. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, like she's seen me at like my lowest, and I mean just like not being able to sleep because I'm in so much pain, or like, hey, like I want to go, like she's like a very joyful, like childlike, you know, like beautiful soul, where it's just like, let's just dance and play, and like sometimes, you know, and it's not, you know, rare, where it's like I'm weighed down by the heaviness of the illness. And she's like, let's go and play, or let's just go for a bike ride, like something as simple. And it's hard for me to even just to get my ass on the bike. I know I'll feel better once I get there, or I'll be in a better mood.
It's just the last thing you want to do.
Yeah, it's just I'm just beat down. I'm just like, man, is this ever gonna let up? And you know, all of those things. So, but she's stood by me, you know, and like that's the whole thing with like unconditional love, you know. It's just like, no, I love you in your ugly moments, in your messy stuff, like, you know, I love you and your anxiety, I love you and your addiction, you know, whatever it is. And that's where I think, like, man, if you found someone that could really hold you even when, you know, you're not really feeling worthy of being held, if that makes sense.
Yep.
You're like, okay, this is like my down, you know, people say like ride or die is like, you know, but truly, you know, like, do you have that other person's back, and do you love them unconditionally? And, you know, I'm very blessed that, you know, she is that for me, and I do the same for her. So,
That's what's up. All right. So now back to the other topic.
Yeah, please.
You get in Austin, and you had an experience in Costa Rica. I'm assuming that's with...
So that, to clarify that, there was no medicine involved,
Okay.
no psychedelics, anything. I went out there, like very brief. I went, stayed with a friend of a friend, and was in a remote part of Costa Rica, and just like lived on the land. Like, you know, it was like in the remote spot where like you can't just go to the store, you know?
Right.
So there's, I forget what the term is off the top of my head, but like even if you're like an American, you own a property in that area, not that you have to, but it's wise to have a local Costa Rican that watches over your property like the whole year, like the rainy season and all that. And I remember very vividly the guy came who was like overseeing the property where I was staying, and he didn't speak any English, and he asked my friend who was hosting, and he spoke English. I mean, he spoke Spanish, and he was essentially like, amigo, and he was asking me like, is there anything I can get for you? Like, is there anything that would make your time here, you know, better? And I said, well, coconut water would be great. I love coconut water.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy climbs up, not in front of me, but he climbed up, harvested some coconuts, found a big soda bottle, and filled it like to the brim. Came back the next day, was like, amigo, amigo. And I was like, wow, like this is like incredible, like total stranger. He didn't ask for it. He wasn't selling it. He was just like, here you go.
Right.
And just walked away. And I was like, wow. And so pretty much when I say transformative, I was like drinking fresh coconut water. I surfed. I was like getting the sunlight, just like, in nature, in the jungle. And I was like, wow, I'm like already kind of feeling better. Like this is kind of, and like not, my phone's not around. And that's when I extended my trip in Costa Rica. I went to, and everyone there was asking, like, are you going to the festival? Are you going to the festival? And I didn't know this, but there's a festival called Envision, which is like a transformation festival. It's like yoga and music and workshops. And that's why the universe works in funny ways. So a complete stranger online gifted me a $300 ticket to go to the festival. And then a woman in the village who is a lawyer, elder woman from Arkansas, I believe, handed me her black card and was like, here, you should extend your trip. Like, I got it. Because I had, like, no money. Like, I was out there on, like, a shoestring budget. You know what I mean? Right. Staying with, like, a homie of a homie. And that's where I was like, if I can just trust in the universe that, like, I am where I'm supposed to be and, like, everything's kind of, like, I do believe, like, one mantra that I work with even still very recently is I am so lucky that everything always works out for me. Mm-hmm. I am so lucky that everything always works out for me. So, like, even if some bad, something perceivingly or, like, I'm stressed out or whatever, like, I'm so lucky that everything always works out for me. So, like, in that sense, I went to Costa Rica and everything worked out for me. Not that it was perfect, but everything worked out. So I came back to the East Coast, still didn't have any money. I didn't have a job in Austin. I only had one homie here. And I was like, I trust in my intuition, which I never even knew what that was. Mm-hmm. And I took the leap, and I came down to Austin. And then when I did that, I ended up meeting a friend of mine who introduced Stephanie and I, and we all actually worked together for some time. And he was already years into doing, like, psychedelic healing work himself. And he started talking to me about it, and I was like, oh, where you been doing that? Like, thinking he was saying, like, in the middle of the Amazon. And he's like, I've been going up to Dallas, actually. And I was like, going up to Dallas to do psychedelic healing work? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, oh, wow. And I had heard the call, like, they say, like, when you know you're ready is, like, you're ready, like, to get sober, or within, like, psychedelic medicine work, like, the same thing. So I had gotten the call like 5 years earlier, like when I was really in that dark place before I was undiagnosed. When I was undiagnosed, I had heard the call for ayahuasca, but I thought that you had to go to the middle of the jungle to do that. So anyway, I learned that really, honestly, Texas is like a huge, it's arguably the most psychedelic city in the whole country.
Really?
And it's leading the whole country in psychedelic work, and really that's being led primarily by veterans, actually. Mm-hmm. And these veterans are like the canary in the coal mine. So, like, VA is not, really up to par for what these guys need and gals need. And, Rick Perry, former governor of Texas, like, big names, Marcus Luttrell, I mean, people, doing, like, deep work. So, so that friend of mine was like pretty much like a guardian angel to me. He told me, hey, I know you don't really have the means to do this, because once again, you want to go sit with ayahuasca or do ibogaine or anything like that, it's not cheap, right? And I'm grateful that, veterans actually have some pretty incredible foundations where you can go and get scholarships to do that work. But in my population within the illness path, there's none of that. There's not like, let me get a scholarship to do ayahuasca to heal from complex, chronic illness. It doesn't exist.
Right.
So anyway, my friend actually was like, just show up. This is when the ceremony is. If you feel called to come, just show up. I'll take care of the rest. And he actually started paying. He paid for the early work that I did with ayahuasca, and that was in 2018. And that changed my life, like completely changed my life. Like to this day, like I don't operate the same. Like I pray every day. Like I meditate almost every day. I was able to let go of so much of the things that I was holding on to, like, oh, this person wronged me, like things that I didn't even know I was holding on to, like, oh, this childhood trauma, or, why me? Like, why, like, what did I do? Like, there's plenty of times where I was like, what did I do to get this illness? Like, is this some kind of karmic thing? Like, you know, sometimes like when it just keeps coming and keeps coming, it's like, why, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And once I started doing the work, and it's not that the plants did it, I did the work, where I started just letting go, like, bro, just whatever is, like, just let it be, and just work on the things that you can work on, let go of the things that you can, forgive people, forgive yourself, you know? And when I started doing that work, things started opening up for me, and like my life just started improving. Like I met, you know, Stephanie and I, and like we started growing our relationship, and like I started studying the plants, like really just dedicating. Like I've been studying and working with plant medicine for like 6 years now.
Really?
Yeah.
Dude, another crazy thing that you're saying, there's been a bunch, but the part about the guy paying for you to do the treatments and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
My friend Penny, who you know, there was a couple years there where she paid for every race that I did, and I didn't even know that. I thought I was getting like free bibs and stuff, but like she literally saved my life because she kept me connected with that running community, kept me motivated by doing these longer and longer races and stuff like that. So she's very much my angel, and she saved my life in so many ways. So the first time you decided to, so when you say psychedelics, that's kind of a blanket statement. What all are we talking about in your world?
Yeah, so like I said, when I first started, I had never really worked with any kind of psychedelic. I dabbled a tiny bit like in high school, but it wasn't in an intentional way. But yeah, ayahuasca,
That's a good way of putting that, with an intentional way.
Right.
Like, are you just taking it to get fucked up, or are you doing it for an intention, like
Exactly.
to have an experience? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, yeah, I primarily only worked with ayahuasca for several years, and yeah, it was with intention. So, you know, there's a lot, like we could talk for hours just in psychedelics alone, you know, and that's why, like I said, like I'm 6 years into studying and working with, you know, how to work with these, and like in the, you know, the big term that people use is set and setting. So like what you were just referencing is what you call like set, like what is your mindset going in, what is your intention going in, and then setting is like what is the setting in which you're doing it. So like, are you taking, you know, say mushrooms and going to ACL, which is nothing wrong with that, I'm fully, you know, or are you sitting down with, say, like, you know, your community in like an addiction setting, or like with a group of veterans, or just a mixed group of people that are all like here because they want to improve their lives, and they know, like, for me, like what I pray every day and like what I bring to like when I do deep work within psychedelics is what can I do, or how can I approach this to be a better partner, brother, son, community member, brother, you know, like, so like how can I show up more fully in the world and, you know, really leave this place better than I found it, you know what I mean? So yeah, so ayahuasca, like I said, for several years, it was very transformative, but I want to keep it real on here. Like a lot of people, I feel like, especially go on Rogan or like these different platforms and talk about like, oh, I did ayahuasca, you know, like Ron White, you know, the incredible comedian, like he got sober from ayahuasca. Yeah. And I hear like all these people saying like, oh, and a lot of people, I feel like, this is just my perception, here like, oh, I just got to get the ayahuasca, you know, if I'm, okay, so I'm a veteran, and I just got to get the ayahuasca, and once I get the ayahuasca, like I'll be cured, you know. Absolutely. So like it, and one thing, like I'll just say, like it doesn't work like that. Number one, it's just like, you know, anything that you do, it's like you get out what you put in, right? So like going to the ceremony, any medicine, to me, although it's very it can be very challenging, or it can be very blissful, or both a lot of times. That's the easy part, though. Mm-hmm. Going to the ceremony is the easy part, bro. Like, nobody, like, people, because I meet people all the time being like, bro, I've drank ayahuasca 100 times, and, like, to be honest, I'm like, you? Because, like, your energy is kind of not that great, bro. Like, right. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the work you're doing outside of the ceremony is, like, where, and that's what they say, like, the work starts as soon as you leave the ceremony. Mm-hmm. So, like, that's what I'm saying, like, with the men's work, like, showing up every week, like, you might be showing up, like, really down and really, like, not in, you know, the best space. And then you show up the next week and you're feeling better, and, like, your brother's kind of feeling down. You can lift him up and, like, you know, yeah, so just really carrying it forth and like, you know, similar to the recovery like that you've experienced and you've helped lead people. It's like, what is your lifestyle too? So it's like, okay, you can go drink ayahuasca, or you can do, you know, you can microdose or whatever, but like, what are your daily habits? Like, are you working out? Are you sleeping well? Are you eating well? Like, you know what I mean? Like, because a lot of people I see, and I've done it too, so I'm not saying it any holier than thou. You go to ceremony, you feel better, you may release something, you may meet somebody new, you're connecting, and like, you know, these medicines do like boost like your serotonin and a lot of those things. So you're like, oh man, I can do it, I'm gonna make the change. And then like 2-3 weeks later, bro, you're doing the same things that you're doing. And then months later, you're like, wait, I thought, and honestly, the trap that I fell into was I just gotta go back to ceremony. So if I can go back to ceremony, I'll figure it all out there, and I'll feel better, and then like my life's gonna be better, bro. So I just got to get back to the ceremony. So then it's like this trap where it's just like thinking that the psychedelics are gonna change your life. It's like, no, like you're gonna be the one that changes it. So like, to be honest, like it's been probably 3 years since I've drank ayahuasca. I really haven't sat in many group ceremonies in several years. Because I will just say, not muddying the waters, but number one, I just want to say to anybody who's interested in doing psychedelic medicine, be very weary of who you're going to do the work with. Like, do you have a personal recommendation of somebody saying that you know who that person is? Like, are they of integrity? Because to be frank with you, I've been traumatized doing psychedelic work, very traumatized. Whereas, like, I went and I thought I had a pure heart and I went to go do the specific work I felt called to, and the container wasn't safe. And the person who was facilitating the medicine they acted like they were here to like really hold the healing, but they were in it to feed their ego. They're in it to pay, you know, to buy a car, or, and to be honest with you, sexual, like the people are asleep. Like, so like the person who's leading the ceremony is like sleeping with some, like I'd say it's a male leader of the ceremony, and he's like trying to sleep with the women who are in the ceremony. Like, bro, like that's the other thing. I just, you know, I'm not trying to like, I'm not on some, you know, whatever. But like some people think like, ooh, psychedelic, like psychedelics are going mainstream. Like I go to some conferences, you know, I'm like a part of like professional network of providers that work with psychedelics and hold space for others. And it's mainstream now, you know, like I just went to a conference in Denver and there was 12,000 people there. And I think the main reason for that is we don't have a lot of tools that are really helping people.
Right.
And to be honest, these medicines, like mushrooms, like ayahuasca, 5-MeO-DMT, a lot of things like that, these are the next wave of therapeutics. But a lot of these they're really like technologies. Mushrooms are like the ancient technologies. They've been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years, right? And the war on drugs made it where, oh, these things are bad, and we've been programmed to think that actually some of the most potent, positive things we have from Mother Earth is illegal, but alcohol is legal.
Right.
So anyway, the perception is changing big time, but there's a lot of big capital out now. People are patenting psychedelics. They're medicalization of psychedelics, meaning they're trying to make it where you have to go to a doctor to do that. So just to be totally, and I'm not going to go on too much longer here, I believe in our First Amendment. The reason why Texas is leading the way within psychedelic medicine, the reason why I have had access, and that's what I'm big on, is like in my community, a great doctor who might be able to help you, but it's thousands of dollars, and most people can't even afford to. It's like sobriety. Like, oh, there's this great sober program, but you can't even afford to go. So, like, what good is it?
Right.
I don't want to see psychedelics going that way. And so, just to be frank, this country was founded upon, in my mind, First Amendment right, which is religious freedom. Now, there's a thing called RFRA, R-F-R-A. It was a ruling in 1993, I believe, that made it where you could practice your religious freedom with ethanogenic sacraments, meaning like with mushrooms and with ayahuasca, with peyote and things like that, and it's legal to do so. And Texas and Florida have two of the strongest religious freedom laws in the whole country because it's state by state, and there are hundreds of psychedelic churches in Texas, and that's how these veterans are doing the work. That's how we're going to be able to scale and to be able to have people have access because, Ibogaine is a super powerful medicine for addiction. 5-MeO-DMT is a super powerful thing for addiction. I mean, ayahuasca, a lot of them. But once again, who can afford to go to a fancy retreat in Costa Rica? Not that many people, but you might be able to go to Dallas, or, to be honest, there's incredible work happening by personal friends of mine and coworkers right in Austin. And that's what's inspiring to me. It's like, okay, let's do the healing work here in America, and let's, be the example we want to set. So, like, for me, I am a psychedelic space holder. I do hold space for people to do psychedelic journeys. I also help people prepare for psychedelic journeys and integrate psychedelic journeys. So, finding people that you can trust, finding people who have walked the walk. Like, if I'm going to listen to Sean Livingston about sobriety or about, doing something, I want to know that he walked it. Like, you found your way through it. So it's like, I don't want to go and work with somebody who hasn't done their work, or like really know that this person is of integrity.
Yeah.
So
that's the exact same way it is for addicts or alcoholics. You know what I mean? It's like me trying to go to a doctor and say, why do I like shooting heroin, or why do I like drinking to excess or whatever? But I need to go to another alcoholic or addict to truly figure out and understand why. Mm-hmm. And dude, unfortunately, like, I went right to hard drugs. Mm-hmm. When I got to weed, do you look at weed as a psychedelic?
No.
No? Okay. So weed, mushrooms, all stuff like that, like, I hopped over right to the hard drugs. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think I ever, unfortunately, I was too young and naive to ever appreciate the psychedelic effects of marijuana or any of the other stuff. I just wanted to be fucked up. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so then that's what gravitated towards the hard drugs. But the one thing I always come back to, and I use weed as an example, is like, for me, the way my brain was programmed, there was never anything in my head where, as soon as I started sticking needles into my body, that I equated to that to being like fucked up, or that I shouldn't do that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, it was just normal for me, like it is for regular people to wake up and brush their teeth. Mm-hmm. I shoved needles in my arms, and I didn't have any problems with it. But it was only when I would smoke weed, on the rare occasions that it was just around. I never even really bought weed. If it was around, I'd smoke, and I'd take a couple hints, and then all of a sudden I'd be like, what the fuck am I doing? I'm shoving needles into my body. Oh my God. And I would like think with this rational train of thought now. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So like, I've personally always had, I know I'm an addict, and I choose to, stay drug-free and stuff like that. Weed is not something that I need in my life or anything like that. But I've always had a tough time classifying that as like a drug. Mm. You know what I mean? Because it's the only thing that ever made me think in my irrational fucking adult mind. Mm. But the more I've learned and heard on podcasts and stuff like that, and know soldiers that have, and even people within the addiction community that have had these mental health issues and stuff like that, and to hear that they've started, microdosing mushrooms, or they've, gotten on the MDMA or, the ecstasy thing under a doctor's care and stuff like that. Yep. Like, it's cool in the recovery world because things are starting to shift and change, where we understand there's no just cookie cutter way. We're all different people. We all have different experiences, and what worked for me might not work for him, but it might work for her. And so it's tough in our field, because that's not something I'm ever going to go tell people who are in currently treatment, like, try fucking Abogaine when you get out. Like, no, you need to go for a good long while with nothing and understand where your baseline is and who you are, where you're at in life, and get to a good place. But, dude, if somebody gets, me personally, I'm not opposed to if you get 5 years down the road and you're sober and you're at a good place in your life and you're working and you have good relationships and stuff like that, and you're seeking healing that you're not able to get from all these other various places, and you try that, like, I'm all for it. Do it. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I'm a big supporter of what you're doing, dude. Like, right on. And it's fucking awesome to hear and see, to truly understand. Like, I still I probably have a 10% understanding of what it's like to go through life with Lyme disease and stuff like that. I've only ever known, your appearance as if you're doing well and watching you run races and run with me on the biggest hills in Austin and shit. But to think about dealing with something, and then to think about the mental health aspect of going to these doctors and them telling you there's nothing wrong with you, it's in your head, shit like that, like, had to be maddening. So yeah,
no, I appreciate that. To be honest, like, I'll be real brief. Like, it's challenging, but I will say like having people having your back. Like like I said, like my partner, incredibly blessed. Like she supports me fully and like really, reminds. Like I feel like like what comes up when you say that is like having people to like remind you of like your own greatness and your own strength, really. But then, like I've done a lot of like mindset work and a lot of just like I do believe like we create our reality, but how we speak and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So like a lot of times I try and hold myself accountable. Like as much as I love her and like I'm incredibly blessed and like to have her push me and things like that, I'm like, bro, it's right here. Like, don't like, and that's the whole thing of like reminding ourselves of like how resilient we are, how tough we are. Like, it's great to have people affirm you and say like, hey, wow, Sean, you're a tough guy. Like, you got past that crazy addiction and you were homeless and all that stuff. But like, really feeling and embodying like, I am resilient. I am tough, and that's why I like the mantras that I work with because. It's just a reminder. Like no one knows when I'm like we're training for the 50K race. Like no one knows. Like, and that's like what I love. I forget who says it, but it's just like, okay, you have this excuse or that. No one cares. It's like, okay, you have this addiction. Like I think if I'm remembering correctly, a group of us, that Sean led. And he organized and was a big I will say thank you and welcomed me to be a part of this group who was training for like arguably the toughest race in Texas called Bandera.
Yep.
But that group was, largely a bunch of people who were sober and recovering from addiction. And that wasn't my journey, but, you guys welcomed me within my illness thing. But regardless, when we were out there doing the work, no one cared about the illness. Right. No one cared about the addiction. It's like, bro, just get the work done.
Yep.
So that's what I try and do, like, as I live. It's just like, okay, this is challenging, but, like, someone always has it worse than you. So, and I love that whole thing of, like, bro, remember when you prayed for what you have right now? Like, remember when you were like, oh, my God, if I could just have the girl, or if I could just have the house, or I could just have, like, the security of a good career or whatever. And it's like, remind myself, like, wow, I'm really blessed and abundant. Yep. And it's like, maybe my life's not perfect. Like, there's plenty of things that I have to work on. But I'm incredibly blessed and abundant, like what am I complaining about? Right. So it's like, okay, I have some pain still. Like, so if you were to ask me like, Dan, so what do you still deal with? Like, I still have joint pain. I have neuropathy in my feet, meaning like the small fibers in my nerve endings in my feet are pretty much deteriorating, and they already have. I have severe arthritis in my back. I still deal with like I gotta have my sleep dialed in. I got fatigue stuff, and like I'm off coffee, which is a big thing for me because I was like doing a lot of coffee to kind of like boost myself and different things like that. But once again, like that's just life, bro. Like everyone has stuff. Like whether you're a single parent or you're whatever. So it's just like. Life is never going to be like this easy road. Yeah. How can you take some of that adversity and just be like, wear it like a badge of honor? Yep. And that's what I try and do with my experiences.
Right. You brought up Bandera, and in that you were talking about your amazing partner and the way she has your back. So I want to tell a story real quick, and this is mainly for everybody in the room listening and everybody listening at home. So we're all running this race, and we had an extra bunk in the cabin, and you and your partner came out to the cabin, and so in trail races, it's a party-ish atmosphere. Everybody's up, everybody's excited. They're about to go run these crazy miles, and so I believe the race started before the sun even came up. If I'm
100K, I think.
Yeah, if I'm remembering correctly, and so everybody's getting ready for their race, and everybody was already awake, and it's probably 3, 4 in the morning, somewhere around there. And so everybody knew I was up, and so everybody in the bunk had started asking me questions about the race because it was all their first race, right? And so everybody's like crowded around my bunk, and all of a sudden out of nowhere, his lovely partner stands up, walks over, and she comes over and she goes, I don't give a fuck who you are, and then just lays into me about us talking while Dan's trying to sleep. And my jaw hit the floor, and I was like, I felt like I was like scared, like my mom had just yelled at me and is like, what did I do? And I'm not used to people talking to me like that, but she didn't give a fuck. She came over, I don't care who you are, he is trying to sleep, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And then we were all very quiet, and everybody just crept back up into their bunks and just sat there until everyone was awake. But dude, that right there, like, that is relationship goals right there. If you can find a woman in your life that my man is fucking sleeping, y'all shut your mouth now.
You care to comment?
I was terrified just gonna bring that up. That is like the opposite of my personality, but when it comes to certain things, like, and somebody that I really love and care for, I will do just about anything. And I'll be like, I don't give a fuck who you are. Like, but I will say that has haunted me.
No, that's,
you can ask Dan. I
that's
was
one of my.
literally,
Well,
I've been
don't
freaking out about it. Like, I can't
let it.
go.
That was one of the coolest things I've ever.
Such a
It just
bitch.
caught me so off guard.
I can't picture you like off guard like that.
It was the last thing in the world I expected, but like I respected it so much, like, and I was just I hope we're cool after this, like, but no, like that right there is couples goals. Like, if your girl cuts for you like that, fucking, you found the one for sure.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Don't ever let that.
I always felt, I was like, oh, this is so mean.
No, fuck that.
She's the softest, like, not soft in a bad way, just mean like, you know, someone on the side of the road is asking for money, like, you know, they talk about like empathy, I have empathy, but, you know, and I'm not trying to like speak for her necessarily, but like empathy, like if you're like that word empath, like if you're an empath, it's a blessing and a curse, you know what I mean? So like,
for sure.
you're taking on other people, like you're like, oh man, I feel that person's pain. So she's like very much that way,
Right.
And but like what you saw is like, yeah, like the mama bear in the sense of like kind of protect your own, and yeah, I mean, you know, like you're, you know, I don't think it's any secret, like you're a leader and people look to you like, okay, where are we going? How are we getting there?
Right,
you know what I mean? So I think, yeah, once you got up, everyone's just like, okay, we're up. Sean's up,
Right.
and she's like, he's still sleeping, you know, whatever. But yeah, man, I mean, that's the whole thing that, you know, like if you're so lucky to find someone that, you know, can accept you and kind of have your back, like you're saying, like, okay, like your partner may have some anxiety, you know, pop up when you're going to something, like, can, you know, you be as loving and as understanding and like, hey, like, I'm really hungry and like I've been looking forward to having this steak all week and we've been talking about it, but like, I'll wait for you. We don't even have to go, you know? Like, okay, you want to have a frozen pizza? Like, what do you want? You know what I mean? In the sense, like, it's not about you. You know what I mean? Like, we're a team here. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's not just about you. And, like, I wouldn't be here doing this podcast right now if she wasn't here with me, you know? Because, like, we're a team. And, like, you know, if she don't help me, like, pack and get my, you know, it's like, you know, we're like, opposites in a lot of ways. And we, you know, push each other and help each other in different ways. So, yeah.
Right. Well, please don't ever feel bad about that. It's one of my favorite stories and favorite things to happen. Like, so much respect for it.
Thank you.
Yeah, dude, I can't. Please don't feel bad about that.
I can finally release it, so thank you.
All right, yeah, go ahead and let it go. I need, when I go home, tell my wife, why aren't you more like that? Stick up for me, goddammit. So, I got some fun questions for you.
Please.
You know, we went through some heavy stuff, and we talked about your. What would you say? Let me ask you this before I go on with these. So, you know, I think you did a pretty good job describing the, you know, the depths and probably your rock bottom time when you're aimlessly trying to just get an answer of what's going on with you in your body and everything like that. Do you have would you say you have like a moment of redemption? Like a moment where you just kind of took a look around and you're like, oh, fuck, man, I'm back. Like, fuck this Lyme disease, whatever. Like, it's not holding me down anymore. Like, I'm back.
Yeah, I'm just feeling into that. I appreciate the question. I mean, you know, like, it probably may seem like low-hanging fruit because, like, I'm sitting here with you, but that race, man, I mean, that's why, like, I really appreciated you welcoming me and being a part of that because I had never ran a marathon before. Like I had ran, you know, not my whole life. To be like totally, I was like heavy, good. Like I was like that power forward that kind of knew how to box out, but like I have these pictures like chubby red cheeks. Like I wasn't like the most like fit ball player, but I could hoop, you know. And then, so it wasn't until I got into like high school, I started like running and all of that, but I never was like the fastest dude. I was never like breaking any records, and I never ran a marathon. So my point is, like you're saying, is there a point where you were like, I'm back, in the sense like to run a 50K when it was sleeting and it was like snowing and raining, and this is the first trail race I ever ran. And the complete trail was supposed to be like, like a trail, like a dirt trail that you go through, and there's a lot of, what Bandera is known for is the hills,
Mm-hmm.
in the incline, and you couldn't step, bro.
Yeah.
Like it was like complete mud, and like had you out there, at the stops. I had Stephanie out there, and like we had our team, and to be able to like do that, finish the race with Russell, another friend of ours. And to really be like, I did that. Like, my first race in 10 years, and it was 31 damn miles.
Yeah.
That was definitely a moment for me.
Yeah.
Redemption.
For those that don't know, out in Bandera, Texas, when it rains, the mud sticks to your shoes, so it's like you're walking around with 2 cinder blocks on your feet. Now do that just for a little bit, and then think of doing that up hills, down hills, all windy for 31 miles. So it makes it a tremendous amount, much more difficult. So, couple quick and fun questions for you.
Please.
Obviously, you're a big Patriots fan. I don't hold it against you. Oh, the whole room just reacted to that. So, just give me the first thing that comes to your mind, whatever your first answer is. You got to pick one.
Okay.
Belichick or Brady?
Belichick.
Ooh, good answer. All right, you can only do one for the rest of your life. Run or the gym?
Run.
Run? Okay. Give me a first word that comes to mind when you hear spirituality.
Purpose.
Purpose. What's your prediction? Patriots over under 9-8 this year?
Over.
Over. Favorite basketball player of all time?
Ooh, got to feel into this one. It's got to be Bird.
Larry Bird, holding it down for the home team. Have you been watching, have you watched Winning Time?
Winning Time?
Yeah.
No.
You haven't seen it?
Was that the Showtime show?
It's on HBO.
It's like a fiction, or it's like Lakers Celtics. No, I
Yeah.
haven't seen it.
Dude, it's fucking great.
Okay.
So good. I think I've talked about it the past 3 episodes. Probably I brought it up. It's really fucking good.
I'm like the person where you're like, you seen this? I'm like, no. So I'll have to check it out.
The dude they get to play Bird is so spot on.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely more about the magic and that whole thing, but the
Yeah.
Celtics are a big part. It's very good. I recommend it.
Right on. Yeah, my dad, put a ball in my hands, and grew up on, VHS tapes of old, 80, I was born in 90, so I missed a lot of that. But,
Right.
anyway. Celtics all day.
Jason Williams is my favorite basketball player ever.
The point guard?
Yeah. White chocolate.
White chocolate. Wow,
Yeah.
that's a good choice.
First thing that comes to mind, family.
So everything. Yeah, everything.
All right. United States of America.
Pride.
Let's go. Last but not least, what is your fight song? You're walking out on Saturday's UFC card. You're about to fight Israel Adesanya for the title. What's your fight song? What are you walking out to?
The one that's really got me right now is Quavo Greatness.
Really?
Mhm.
A mumble rapper. How dare you? You're from up north. I can't believe you came
Bro,
with Quavo.
I'm a 90s hip-hop head.
I know. So what are you
To
doing?
be honest, I couldn't. If you said name one Migos album, I would not be able to do it.
Right.
I'm not. I feel like it's easy to throw shade at new, whatever.
Right.
But
Very easy, but go ahead.
But I love being surprised by a Spotify. That was just a Spotify recommended.
Yeah.
I could tell you a million J. Cole, Love Yours is a easy one, but what you're walking out, you said, what you're walking out to on
Right.
some swagoo kind of,
Yeah.
and it's greatness, bro, I am greatness, what do we need to do, let's do it, so
Right.
I've been vibing on that one.
All right. So what's it called? It's Quavo.
Quavo, which is part of the Migos. and
Right.
One of the Migos, his I don't know if exactly his nephew or one. They're related, and one of them got murdered actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Take Off.
So this was his first album after that.
What's the song called though?
Greatness.
Greatness.
That's what
All
it's
right.
called,
I'm gonna
yeah.
look it up.
Quavo Greatness.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna listen to it on the way home.
Oh, it's a banger.
Okay. All right. He said it's a banger. All right. Dude, one of the things we like to do to kind of wrap up the podcast, it's called the I Am Redemption podcast. You know, when I say I Am Redemption, I'm not talking about just me, but it's anybody who has a powerful story and has been lucky enough to kind of work their way through that and use that experience to help others and stuff like that. So if you would be so kind, if you take a look into your camera and let everybody know who Dan is.
I am greatness, I'll say that. Yeah, brother, friend, partner, son. I believe I'm a soul being inhabiting this body to, incarnating in this reality to leave it better than I found it, to do the work that I'm here to do, and to be the best ally and light being that I could be, and bring more light to the world, and like I said, leave it better than I found it. So
Dude,
that was Dan.
That was great, brother.
Right on.
Well, dude, I cannot thank you enough for traveling all the way down here and taking the time out of you and your lovely fiance's day. I appreciate you coming on, being so vulnerable, being so open about your journey, your experience, your honesty, everything like that. Dude, you are an inspiration to me, and I thank you very much, brother.
Yeah, it's an honor,
Thanks,
brother.
man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, peace.
Woo.